This is Summer Wyatt Bacharach. I'm the Executive Director of the Parelli Foundation, and I am thrilled to have you all joining us for the finale of an amazing webinar series, with this webinar being with Linda Parelli, none other. We are so grateful and so excited to have her finish out this webinar series for us, this 3 factors of riding success that was all thought up from a blog done by Natural Horseman Saddles. So we're excited and grateful for them to have provided that, that creative blog for us to form this webinar from as well. So I hope that you are as excited as I am to see what Linda has to bring to us about this final part of 3 factors of riding success. Before I introduce Linda, though we all know who she is and that's why we're here, I want to talk a little bit about the Parelli Foundation, just in case you're joining us for the first time or maybe you don't know much about us. Head over to ParelliFoundation.org if you've got a little bit more free time on your hands these days, or head over to Facebook and look up Parelli Foundation. I know you will find at least one thing, if not all the things that you love about what it is that we do. We are so proud and honored to carry the Parelli name and to fulfill Pat and Linda's mission to make the world a better place for horses and humans every single day. So if you're interested in what we do after you check us out, which I know you will be, shoot us an email, reach out on Facebook, give us a call. We would love to teach you more about what we do. But for now, we're so grateful for you to join us. As I said, we all are here because Linda is going to give us a free webinar. So I don't need to do a huge introduction, but as we know, she's passionate about teaching and sharing as much as she possibly can with each and every one of us to make it easier for all of us to find joy and harmony with our horses. And that's why she's here today to help us with this free webinar from the Parelli Foundation. So to no further ado, I bring you Linda Parelli.
Thank you, Summer. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hello, hello. And in the words of the famous Janice Dulac, get ready to hurt. Now, let me start by saying, you know, I've always been passionate about trying to be a good rider. At first, it was because I wanted to be a good rider. But once I started studying with Pat and seeing things from the horse's point of view, my focus changed about what good riding really is. And, you know, I always thought, oh, dressage and competition, but my horse didn't care about that. You know, he just cared more about what I felt like on his back. And so that launched me into a whole lot of study for years. And many of you have probably been through all of my stages of discovering and teaching that, and starting with fluidity. And fluidity has not gone away by any means, but I want to explain what that is. So I remember Pat saying one time, you know, riding is nothing more than the mere act of not falling off your horse. But good riding is something completely different. Good riding is where you get a thumbs up from your horse. And when you get off, your horse, you know, you can put your arm over your horse and say, was it as good for you as it was for me? And I often hear people saying, you know, oh, I wish my horse could talk. And it's like, no, you don't, because you probably don't want to hear what they have to say. But as we start to understand their body language, then of course, you know, they are telling us, they are communicating with us, you know, through how they move, how their muscles develop, what their shape looks like. All of that is what we need to learn to understand and discover. And I know through both Janice and Letitia over the last couple of weeks that you've already got a lot of information around that. So today I want to give you some clues and some keys in how you can be better as a rider in a very simple way. So if I was to ask you the question, what is a good rider? What immediately goes through your head? What are you thinking? Now, if you've been in one of my courses over the last few years, don't answer this because you should already know the answer. But usually what people say is, oh, you know, that I'm confident and I can ride up and down hills, I can walk, trot, canter, even gallop, I can jump, I can do flying changes, slide stops, spins, piaffe. I mean, I've heard all of these things. And it's like, yes, you're probably a very good rider if you can do all of those things. But now if I change the question to this, what would your horse say as a good rider? It would be a very different set of answers. And Pat actually has nailed them in the 10 qualities of being a horseman. So if you think about it from a horse's point of view, let's narrow it down to your balance, your feel, your timing, your sensitivity, how you set it up. If you're doing in your body what you want the horse to do in its body, instead of just telling it what to do, no matter what you're doing in your body. A lot of people ride with hands and heels, right? It's all about the reins and it's all about the feet. And then when horses have trouble, you know, they go down that road of, I've got to have a different bit. I've got to tie his mouth shut because it's open all the time. I've got to tie his head down because, you know, it's all over the place and up and upside down. And then if my horse doesn't go, then I need spurs. When you start going down that road, it's devastating for horses. You know, they just feel forced. They get emotional. And some of them are very opinionated about that. They'll buck you off. Other horses just freeze up. Some go crazy. Anyway, what we want to do is start going, how can I learn to do in my body what I want the horse to do in its body? Because it's amazing how horses will just start to do it. And when I ride my horse, you know, what I want I always think about this, what I want my horse to feel is, I don't know why, but I feel like walking. I don't know why, but I feel like trotting. I don't know why, but I feel like cantering. I feel like turning. I feel like stopping. I feel like going backwards. I feel like doing a flying change. I feel like bending. I feel like stretching. Those will not happen in your horse unless you can do them in your body. And I've produced a lot of materials on this. In the Savvy Club, you're going to find a heck of a lot of it, but also, you know, on some of the DVDs like the Finesse Training Sequence and Game of Contact and even the Precision Box. Not to mention all the things, you know, I did probably 15, 20 years ago around fluidity and learning how to be part of your horse. And my initial inspiration was Pat, because I would watch him and it was like the horse was just an extension of him. You know, he'd go, oh, I got to go do that. And they'd just be gone and you wouldn't even see what he did. Or he'd stop. You know, it just looked so magical, especially if he had no bridle. But as I started to have eyes to see it, I would often be assisting him or watching him teaching. And I would look at him demonstrating something. And then I'd look at how the riders were doing it. And of course, they wouldn't get the results that he did most of the time. And then I started trying to think about why. And I would look at Pat's posture and what he was doing in his body. And then I would look at the riders and see that they weren't doing that. That no matter what Pat said, they would still use their hands or their heels and they wouldn't be having any consciousness of what their body was doing. So then when I started to teach, this is how long ago it is, I would start to say what I would see were the differences. So I developed courses and clinics around that and would help people with, you know, little bits of their riding. And in the beginning, it was fluidity, how to do in your body what the horse is doing in its body, and then how to do in your body what you want the horse to do in its body. So in the beginning, with passenger lessons and learning how to feel and just let go of all your concepts of how I should sit and do all of this kind of thing. When you're a passenger, you learn how to go with the flow. You learn how to let go of your body and feel your horse's movements and synchronize with them. And then one day you turn the tables and go, all right, now I'm going to do this. And the horse synchronizes with you. So through all those years of experiments and, you know, trying to figure things out, I would ride, and if you've again ridden with us and studied our materials, you've done this as well because I put it into our teaching formats. I would ride along and I'd go, I wonder if I can mimic what my horse is doing with his front legs. And so I would mimic those front leg movements. And as soon as I did that, my horse would change. And I realized then it was because when I started doing this, he felt harmony from me. When I sat with my shoulders back and my hands here and trying to be correct, my horse would go, oh my gosh, you're in my way. And I would do the same thing with my feet in the stirrups. I would go, okay, if my legs are like my horse's hind legs, can I move them like he's moving them? And that was the origination of pedaling. Well, you really are only supposed to do that in the exploratory part of learning it. You know, if you're still doing this 2 weeks and 2 years and 20 years later, you're exaggerating. You don't need to do that. You've got to get to where you can do it in your skin. and your neighbors can't see it, right? Otherwise they go, what is that stupid rider doing, you know, with their legs and their arms, and, you know, everything's exaggerated because that's what you're trying to learn. And then I would do things with my rib cage, and I would experiment. You know, if I bowed my body up and like bulged my back, what would my horse do? If I hollowed my back, what did the horse do? If I used one leg more strongly or leaned over to the side, what would my horse do? And, you know, Janice and I have had fantastic conversations because she kind of did the same thing, but more, you know, on a refined level with that dressage goal in mind, which is, you know, very highly educated riding and harmony with the horse. So for lots of people, you know, they just wanted to have their horse not buck, or to travel smoother, or to have better transitions. Well, you can't make a horse do a transition nicely unless you're doing it in your body. You're walking, then the horse can walk. If you're trotting in your body, then the horse can trot. And the same thing with canter. But if you're walking in your body, or worse still, doing nothing, and you tell your horse to do that, you're going to get all kinds of trouble, because he's going to go, what? I didn't even know we were supposed to be doing anything except standing still. So let's talk about position. First of all, what is the best position? There's so many opinions on this. And again, I'm going to ask the horse, what is the best position? And he's going to say one that is balanced and has no tension. And a lot of us, as soon as we get on the horse, we're not balanced. We're leaning forward, or we're leaning backwards. Our back is hollow. We're crooked in our body somehow, in our stirrups, in our shoulders. That's not balanced. So learning how to find that balance is number one on the horse's list, where we're not interfering with his movements. Then the second thing that I think a horse would like in position is steadiness. A lot of the time, you know, we're very unconscious of how much we're moving our hands, and how much the bit then moves, and the reins irritate the horse, how much our legs are moving. How is the horse supposed to sort all of that stuff out? So I often talk about my horse Jazz. You know, he's trained to a pretty high level now, and the littlest things that I do trigger a response in him that is a learned behavior. When I do this, he'll do that. So if somebody gets on him and is unconscious about what they're doing with their legs and their hands, I'm telling you, that horse is going to be doing a lot of things that you didn't think, or you didn't want, but didn't even realize you were telling the horse to do. The opposite end of the scale is the dude horse, the rental horse, because they are so trained to ignore people, they become really safe, because, you know, you can take photos, you can have your legs bouncing around, you can bounce around, and the horse goes, oh, just another tourist, right? Just another person learning to ride. They've learned to ignore all of that. But now try and get that horse to do something. It's going to be very difficult. So what we want to do is get somewhere in the middle, where we are communicating on purpose with how we hold and move our body, not accidentally. So some of you are probably going, I better go out and apologize to my horse. Let me tell you, I've apologized to my horses over the years, constantly, because when I improve, I realize the things that I was doing before that weren't that great. But here's what saves us, because what I don't want you to do is go, oh, I just got to hang up my riding pants now because I'm never going to be good enough. That's not true. What we're really lucky to have is a great relationship with our horses. And if I can put it this simply, you know, you remember before you started all this Parelli stuff, that if you accidentally slapped your horse, or hit him with a stick, or, you know, jerked on the rope, that your horse would have a big fit. But then after you start doing 7 games and your relationship improves, and communication, and you're reading each other's body language, you can accidentally slap the horse with your rope, and the horse will look at you and go, was that an accident? They read it, okay? So the same thing happens with our riding. They're much more forgiving when our relationship is strong. And of course, that's what the Parelli program is all about. Let's put the relationship first, get that really solid, and your horse will happily put up with your learning curve, because the relationship's strong, right? They know when we mean it and when we don't mean it, and that's the truth. All right, so I'm going to give you a few keys here, and my protege in training apprentice right now is Courtney Crane, and Courtney is going to help me so that I can poke and position her and show you some of the things that I'm talking about. We may have to move the camera here and there. You can see that I've got a little simulator here. This is an equicizer, and we call this horse Roxy. We have Rambo in Colorado, and this one is Roxy. Okay, so Courtney, would you mind getting on? And we're going to do a few things here where I want you to see, you know, the good versus the evil, right, from the horse's point of view. Okay, so she's sitting in a very natural position right now. She's very relaxed through her legs. She's not trying to sit properly, and she's perfectly balanced. If you look at her hip and her shoulder alignment, you know, she's not leaning forward, she's not leaning backwards. Her back here is nice and flat, right? And this was just, now she's training a lot, you know, to ride well. But just the fact that she can jump on a horse like this and just relax and she's balanced, that's a great goal that we need to have. You know, do I know what balance feels like? So let's change some things a little bit. Lean forward and arch your back, okay? So now this is not balanced. The weight is actually going to the front of her seat, and she's actually having to counterbalance. As her pelvis goes forward, the top of the body has to come back. And then sometimes people will stick their neck forward. That's right. And what you'll see is a series of zigzags through the body instead of a nice straight alignment. So come back on your balance point, okay? And bring the top of your body just forward a little bit. And this is now nicely balanced. So the balance point is something that I started teaching many, many years ago. And I find a lot of people forget about this. And a great way to feel your balance point, to know if you're on it, is first of all to rock onto the front of your seat bone, right? Known as the crotch. That is not a good thing to sit on. That's not made for sitting on. This is what's made for sitting on, right? So now if you're on your crotch and you go, oh, that doesn't feel very good, you know you're in the wrong position. So you're on the front edge of your seat bones, which is kind of like a rocker. Now you're going to roll through that rocked seat bone all the way until you feel it soften and you can feel your cheek, right? And you go, oh, this must be right. It feels way better. I'm on the back edge of my seat bones now. So now you're going to test and see, can you lay your palm flat on your horse's rump? If you can do that, you're on your balance point, because look at this. Lean forward and arch your back. Now try and touch that. She can't put the heel of her hand on there. So balance point is the first thing you need to master. So find that position again. Yes, and she just right here. Yep. Yep. And then she just brings her arm forward. And there we are. Right? Nicely balanced. So balance point is key. And when I first figured out my balance point, I needed a way to test it because I'm a little bit crazy and I want to test it like every 10 seconds and make sure that I'm still on it. And that's literally what I did. I would start walking and I'd test it. And I'd find as soon as I started walking, I've kind of leaned forward and hollowed my back. And as soon as I tried to check this, that was the feedback. And so at walk, trot, I would do that. Now at canter, it's a little more difficult because this big rocking. And if you try to hold your palm back here, sometimes horses will buck. And sometimes, you know, there's so much rocking that you actually can't keep your hand on it. So when you check your balance point at the canter, the easiest thing to do is hold the back of your saddle. So pretend that this is the saddle. Right, that's the cantle on the back of the saddle. And I'm going to get close to your bum, okay? Right, so what you want to be able to do is feel your butt up against your thumb as you're holding the back of the cantle. So if you were to lean forward, you see how that comes away from your thumb. And now when you rock backwards onto the back edge of the seat bone, there you are on it. So there's a lot of times that I'm coaching riders who have trouble with the canter, that they're bouncing. When you're bouncing, your pelvis is on the wrong angle and you're stiff. And there's no way with your back this tight that you can absorb your horse's motion. And so you just grab the back of your saddle and sit on your thumb, right? Actually, Courtney and Aaliyah gave me a packet of plastic thumbs for Christmas. because I was saying it so much, and it's really funny. It's a bit creepy, but it's fun. But when you sit on that, you want to go, all right, as the horse canters, can I keep my butt on my thumb? And then pretty soon you imagine the thumb is there, and you put your hand where you want it to be, and now you have a little push on that thumb and that canter. And it's not pushing backwards with your tailbone. It actually comes from your belly button, because as you bring your belly button back and your tailbone forward, all of this gets into the right position and keeps you on your balance point. Excuse me. So that's the most critical thing. If there's one thing I want you to take out of this seminar, excuse me, I'm all croaky, it's your balance point. Because as soon as you do that, horses will change how they move. It puts the weight on the horse's hindquarters instead of on the front end. The more you lean forward, the more the weight goes. You can actually see this horse's head nod down, right? Let's do it again. Let's see if I can do it here. Put your weight back on your balance point. So here's the horse's head. And now put it forward onto your crotch. And you can see actually that it left, I don't know if it zooms in enough, but there's like a half-inch difference now. Where that, on the static thing, showed how much our weight affected the horse's forehand instead of keeping it on the hindquarters. Now, why do you want the weight on the hindquarters? It's because that's where a horse's power is. In his hind legs, he's got all these angles. They're like a giant spring. The front legs are pretty straight apart from that shoulder and elbow joint. So it's not designed for carrying weight. That's also why we set our saddles back. A lot of people put their saddles way up over the horse's shoulders and right over his front legs. And horses have a lot of trouble with that because now they can't use their power. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. We've actually drawn a little scapula here on this simulator. And when we put saddles and teach saddling and shivving on this, we show people how to position it back here. Because now it gives room for the scapula to move, but even more importantly, it puts the weight on the horse's hindquarters. So when you see a horse is muscling, it will tell you if he's on the hindquarters or not. Horses that are on the forehand, they tend to have a very drop low chest. They have big muscles under their necks. Their tail is a little bit high instead of curving down, unless you've got an Arabian, but even they will curve down. And then, of course, the way the horse travels will tell you about it. It'll be choppy and stiff and uncomfortable. The horse will be unwilling to go if he's an introvert, and he'll be taking off or bucking and showing an opinion if he's an extrovert. So again, that body language where the horse is going, you know, this feels terrible, is something that we would then first want to check ourselves. Okay, so that's number one, balance point. Now, let's look at the next thing. We want to make sure that our shoulders and our hips are lined up. And how are you going to do that, right? Here's a way. If you hang your hand straight down to the back of your thigh, your body should be in line with that. So let's have a look at some wrong ways, right? You're going to arch your back and lean forward, and now hang your arm down. It doesn't feel right, does it? And you can see it's like way back. So if you kept your arm there and went back to your balance point, there's a spot where now that feels comfortable, right? It's not straight. Natural. Yes. Now let's do the opposite and lean all the way back. Let this hang. Let this hang. Right? So now you go, I can't even touch my thigh. Right? So if you start straightening up, leave your hand hanging and see if it'll touch the back of your thigh, and then you're going to be in the right place again. So these are little tips and tricks that I want to be able to teach you, because you don't always have someone there that can help you, or you don't have mirrors so you can't see yourself. So, that was very much me. So I thought, how am I going to figure out all these things where I can give myself feedback and know if I'm on the right track or not? Right? So now we've got this. Now, as far as the upper part of your body, like your neck and head, a lot of us will either look down, so look down, and you'll see that that puts the weight actually onto the forehand again, because it moved her head, which weighs, what does a head weigh? 15 pounds. You just put 15 pounds in front of the rider, right? So you're adding weight to the forehand. So she needs to look straight ahead, not up too high. If you look up too high, then you actually break here. That's a bit too high. But a lot of people, they kind of look up to the tops of the trees, and then they're disengaged here, and their horse will do the same thing. It's kind of like you won't get that nice roundness through his withers in his neck. So you want to look straight ahead and stretch the back of your neck. So if this was the ceiling here, then you try to get your head to touch that ceiling, the back of your head here, and stretch it up. So now you've got to stretch all the way down your spine. So don't look down because it puts weight on the forehead. Don't look up because it collapses the shoulders. And every day you aim to try and have this kind of balanced posture that is supple and not stiff. All right, let's look at arms. If Courtney left her arms like this and then lifted her hands like palms up a little bit and put them together, that's the perfect way to hold reins. But here's often what happens. People pick up the reins, there's the reins, and their arms go forward, and then they end up riding like that. Now, of course, I've done all of this, so that's why I'm an expert in, not only pointing it out, but knowing how to fix it. And so the first thing is to realize, again, that this puts weight on the forehand, let alone if you're looking down, and your arch. You can see that horse's head already go down, right? So we've got to go, okay, I've got my reins here. I need to bring my elbows back to my side. And ideally, have your arm, your upper arm, be parallel to your body, right, to your trunk. This is not always easy, especially once you get into motion. But here's an interesting thing. When you ride freestyle with one hand, this arm is on your thigh, right? Or just, I don't know what people do with that arm, but sometimes it's even carrying a carrot stick that's over your shoulder, right? But you can see that this is nicely balanced here. And what's really interesting is that we've done some experiments where I've sat on riders, like they're on all fours, and I do different things in my body so they can feel what the horse feels. And as soon as I put two arms forward, they go, oh my God, I can feel the weight on my forehead. If I bring both arms back, it feels great. If I put one forward and have one back, it still feels great. So riding freestyle with one hand usually is very, very comfortable for the horse, and it's quite easy for the rider because you have to do something with that arm, and it comes naturally to do that. We should call this natural horsemanship. Okay, so the exercise that we did before of hanging the arm down can now help you with your reins. And go, all right, I've got to feel this part of my arm on my belt. And now, can I bring this up and be in the same place? Now, the more you want to ride with finesse and collection and transfer to Lily, she's got, Lily's a little impatient, so she's going to say hello and then be quiet. Okay. That didn't work at all. Just know that I'm not known for horse training. For dog training. Okay, so this is going to help you train it. And often, when you're riding with a little bit of a longer rein or you're not really wanting to collect your horse, you tend to put your arms here. And I still do it, and I have to catch myself and stop it, because although I'm trying to be nice to my horse, what I'm doing is already putting weight on the forehand. So if you want to have not too short a contact, let the rein slip a bit and get your arm back here so that then your horse will stay balanced. So animal control. Okay, where are we now? Legs. Okay, so can we put the camera down to the legs? Hey, shush. Okay, so now we're going to look at Courtney's legs. And when she's got her legs nice and relaxed like that, you can see that her thigh drapes really nicely down. What a lot of people do when they ride is they put their knees up here and their heels up. You see that a lot. And believe it or not, as soon as that happens, the weight goes on the forehead. Again, I've been sitting on riders and I sit everything balanced, and then I lift my heels and immediately they feel the weight on their forehead. So this again is all going forward in that way instead of down and that way. And if you let your leg hang down and lift your toe, it actually puts the weight back here, right? Even if your leg is not totally here for collection, right? Push it down a little bit. When you want to be collected and really get engaged, then you need, more of this feeling, and it takes a lot more effort. But even if you were just here and this was draped and your toe was up, it's going to feel a lot better to the horse. Up, lift that toe. Okay. And a lot of people have, and relax. A lot of people have trouble lifting their toe because they've ridden with their heels up for so long that these muscles have gotten short and these ones are long. And now you've got to start training your body to do the opposite. And so a lot of people have trouble with that. And it's not like they're not trying, but it's so difficult because of the way their muscles are shaped. So you can do things like stand on a tiny little step with a ball of your foot, like a piece of wood, let's say, and let your heels sink down onto the floor. And then just do it little by little. Don't go crazy because you're gonna be sore, and that's not gonna help either, because then your body defends itself. But all those little things that will slowly put your muscles into the right position instead of it being tight in the wrong place and loose in the wrong place. Right? We want it looser here and tighter here. And so you've got to train that so that your body can do it, so your legs can do it. Another thing that riders do is they turn their toes out like that. And when that happens, this is a ball and a socket joint, so it can swivel no problem. But this is not. This is a sliding joint. And this is a whole bunch of complicated, things, but it still, is not supposed to swivel. So when you do that, you tend to start to get problems in your knees, like knee pain, ankle pain, and sometimes even hip pain, because things get tight. So if you can think as if you've got headlights, on your legs, you've got headlights on your toes, headlights on your knee, and headlights on your hips, and your tailbone, which is shining straight out, and try to keep those all pointing forward, unless you have to use a spur. It's until you get the desired result and then get back here, because you don't want to have sore legs. Now, if you just went totally relaxed and see your toes turn out a little bit, this is not going to be a problem. But as soon as you're in stirrups, if you're twisting your leg, you're going to twist your joints, and then you're going to have a problem. Okay? That was pretty good. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is train you for your stability, right? So we're going to do it up here first, and then we'll step down, all right? So Courtney's going to get into what we call the rider stance. So she was standing on the floor. Her feet would be level and under her body, right? Because you can't stand and have your feet in front of you because you're going to fall over. So they'll be right under her body. And then everything will be stretched up nicely like that. Elbows down, palms up. And if I was to challenge her and push her like this, she is naturally stable. But now watch. If you can't see her toes, but we're going to say, turn your toes out. And nothing else changed, but look at the instability that's there now. And if she put her heels up, there's no stability there at all, right? And that's just from her heels. Everything else was good. Now put your toes straight and your heels. Do you want to just show what she's doing? Toes straight, heels level, toes up. And there she's solid as a rock, right? Really cool. All right, so now let's change some more things. Okay, you're going to arch your back. So, and I'm going to test her. That's the only thing she's changed. No stability, right? Everything moves around, especially going on the forehand. Coming backwards is not that much of a problem. But if she got on a balance point, kept her core tight, like Janice was showing us, now look at her, she's like a rock, forwards and backwards and sideways. It's really strong. So let's put your elbows out in front of you, even just a little bit. Okay, everything else stays the same. No stability, right? Let alone if her arms were straight or high and wide. Nothing, okay? So we'll put that all back together, and she's solid as a rock. Okay, now you're going to look down. Whoa, there it goes. No stability, right? What about elbows out? Got left and right stability, but look at this. Nothing here. Okay? Look up a little too high. Nothing. Okay? Stretch your neck. Stable. And now, watch her hands. She's got her palms slightly up, and now what she's going to do is turn them flat. Nothing. Even though she's keeping everything else the same. Put your palms slightly up, boom, solid as a rock. So that natural stability is something that you have to first of all be aware of, and then you have to train yourself to do it. And the best place to train is on the ground. So how are we going to do this? Yeah. Come on up. See if we can move it over that way a little bit so we've got a bit more room. Okay, perfect. All right. So Courtney's going to do this with me. All right. Can you see the screen? All right. So what we want to do is have our feet slightly apart, like about the width of our shoulders, or even a little wider. Wider is good. Then it's better than narrow. And now what I want her to do is sink down in her knees. And as she sinks down in her knees, she's going to put the weight over her knees, right? Because sometimes we sink down on our knees and we stick our butt out. So stick your butt out like a chair seat. Yeah. And now, you have no stability there, right? But if she tucks her butt, points her tailbone forward and a little bit up, then she gets what I call good wrinkles here. See those? Mm-hmm. Those are something you really want to cultivate. And Janice was the one that told me about this, because one time our good friend, Grand Prix rider and trainer, Luis Lucio in Spain, rode my horse Rema, and Rema completely changed the way that he was moving. And I called Janice and I said, I need you to watch this video with me and tell me what he's doing. And she just went, see those wrinkles? That's what you want to get. So how you get those wrinkles is to lift your pubic bone, tuck your tail a little bit and lift your pubic bone. And in the front of your body, I imagine that you have 3 dots. Turn to face the camera. So you have a dot at the top of your pubic bone, one in your belly button, and then one right here on your sternum where your bra is. And you're going to pull those together, right? So the top one comes down, the bottom one comes up, and the middle one goes back. And at first, you're not going to be able to breathe, but you will eventually. And don't overdo it. Just train yourself a little bit every day. When I'm walking and standing and teaching and whatever, I'm constantly working on those just a little bit so that it becomes my habit. Okay, so turn sideways. Let's start from the beginning. All right, sink down in your knees, a little more, a little more. If you want about 120 degrees, if you've got a protractor, you can check it. And you're going to make sure that your shoulders and your hips are level. Look straight ahead. Get your good wrinkles by lifting your pubic bone, pointing your tailbone forward. Bring your dots together now. Top, bottom, and middle. When you pull your middle one back, it makes your back nice and flat instead of hollow. And then she's going to stretch her armpits and elbows down. It's kind of relaxed and down. Lift her palms up and bring them together, not wide, and stretch up the back of her neck. And that is the rider stance. You show her head a little bit. And now if I gave her the same test as when she was on the horse, it would be the same thing. Now, there she's a little bit loose. It's like put your top dot down. If your upper body's loose, it's your top dot, right? Very good. Okay, so you can train that. You can have somebody push you around until you find it. But you'll find all of these simulations and things in my finesse manual, and also in Touchstone 10, which is balance and posture in the Savvy Club. But learning how to do this changed my life. Janice shared so much with me. I'm so indebted to her for her work to give me the understanding and the knowledge. I look at some pictures that we have around the classroom here, and there's some things that I look very natural as a rider, and I'm doing quite well. But once I needed to go to a higher level in my riding, I needed to learn how to train my body and be more aware of it. So again, you can get as crazy as you want, as ambitious as you want, but it all comes back to that one thing, balance, 2 things, and stability. And these exercises will help you do that. Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Courtney. So where are we? we still have about 15 or 20 minutes. So, I just look at my notes. Is there anything that I haven't covered? I think they're the most important things. And then probably as we're doing questions and answers, some other important things will come up as well. I'm going to grab a chair. Summer, do we have any questions?
Yes, we sure do. Reminder to those of you who haven't submitted your question, you can still go ahead and do that in the Q&A or in the webinar chat, either way. I'll go ahead with a quick one here. Any tips on finding the suspension at the canter?
Suspension at the canter?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you said? It was just freezing. Suspension at the canter?
Yes. Any tips on finding your balance point if you are riding in suspension at the canter?
I'm not quite sure what is meant by suspension, but in the canter, to find your balance point, sit on your thumb. Hold the cantle with your outside hand and keep your your butt, like not the bottom of your butt, but the middle of your butt, keep that on your thumb. That's the quickest, fastest, most transformative way. And your horse will tell you immediately. They drop their head and start to round their back.
That's so important. And that just answered another question that I had. So that's super. Let's see here. This one, just kind of mechanical. How much weight should I have in my stirrups versus my seat?
I like to put quite a bit of weight in my stirrup. And I share the weight between my stirrups, my knees, and my seat. Because if I have 100% weight on my seat, that's only good for freestyle riding, right? Or bareback riding. But once I start to do finesse and I want my horse to have more suspension, I've got to create a little bit of room for him. And not by standing in my stirrups necessarily, but hovering, like just getting a little lighter in your seat. So you have to put a bit more weight into your stirrups to do that.
Super. I know that's going to clarify a lot of things for a lot of folks. And speaking of clarification, you know, somebody just asked, is this the same for Western riders? So, you know, clarifying the tutorial that you just gave, you know, I know what you mean, but clarifying, is this, you know, across all seats?
Yes, to me, good riding is good riding. So it doesn't matter what style or fashion or whatever. But, you know, we all have favorite sports that we want to do. So going back to the first question I asked about, you know, what is a good position? What's the right position? There's a different position when you're trail riding compared to when you're doing dressage, compared to when you're cutting, compared to when you're jumping. You're riding downhill, uphill. There's, you know, your stirrups will be shorter. Your weight distribution between your seat and your feet will be different according to the sport. So when it comes to just basic riding and balance, it's universal. But when we started talking about how much weight goes in the stirrups, there's going to be more weight in the stirrups when you're doing dressage versus when you're cutting, right? Or even trail riding. You don't put a lot of weight in your stirrups because you're really riding on your balance point and in a very freestyle position. But like I was talking about with dressage or finesse, when you want your horse to come more up through his back, you have to create that little bit of space and lightness, or you're going to actually put a ceiling on him, right? So I'll never forget Craig Johnson riding with us at the summit. I think it's called the Savvy Conference back then, and some of you may have been there. And he and Karen Rolfe were doing a demo together, and then they switched horses. So he got on the English horse and she got on the reining horse. And Craig looked amazing on that dressage horse. You know, like quite often an English rider will get on a Western horse and they still look good because they've really worked on their position. But Western riders tend not to work so much on their position, you know, except for not looking like a slob. It's a little bit more of a natural approach, really. And usually when they get on an English horse, they look, you know, a little bit slouched and their legs are a bit forward. They're kind of in a chair seat. And Craig was perfectly balanced. I mean, just like we saw Courtney, you know, when we got her all lined up, that's what Craig looked like. The only thing was his toes were out because, you know, there was that kind of Western thing with the spurs, but it was beautiful to watch. So again, you know, I think there's good biomechanics for the horse and good biomechanics for the rider. And the more interested you are in that, the more balanced and stable you have to be in your body and your seat.
Great.
But good riding, good riding.
Perfect. I think this one kind of, you may have just answered this. You know, people talk about everyone, obviously everyone's different. Everyone looks different, is built different, maybe has different injuries in their past or whatnot. So there's a couple based on that train of thought. This person asked, what if you were long-waisted, you have short arms, not the perfect body perhaps, can you have your hands a little bit higher or your reins a bit longer?
No.
I knew
we have to learn how to get our body. Yes, I'm sorry. But we have to learn how to get our bodies to be more compacted. You know, I've worked with riders that have very tall, long bodies, but what you usually find is that their chest is up high, and so they get elongated instead of pulling their dots together. So you have to learn how to compress and compact your body without tension. And Janice obviously does amazing work on this. And as soon as they do that, you know, the horses go better, the riders look better, your hands can be more in the right place. I've often had, you know, when I'm teaching and I'm explaining how to do various things with the body, people will go, well, that's fine, you've got long legs. It's like, I do not have long legs, I've got short legs. But why do they look long on my horse? And it's because I've learned how to open my hips and have good wrinkles and stretch my thigh down instead of pulling my knee up and my heel up, right? And closing my hip. So your long leg comes from your open hip flexor, not from just having long stirrups, because then usually your heel's up. So when people say that to me, I say, come over and stand next to me. And usually their legs are longer than mine, but they look shorter on the horse because they haven't learned how to open their hips and drape their legs. Same thing with arms. And yes, of course, some people have short arms, and then, you know, you're going to have to find what to do. But usually, you know, the length of your arms has to correlate also to the length of the reins and how far you want the bit from your body. So if you have very short arms, then your reins are going to have to be a little bit longer, but maybe only like an inch. You know, it's not like they have to be 6 inches longer. But the main thing is that if you've got short arms, that your elbows aren't going forward, because we saw, you know, what that does to the horse. So find that way to keep your elbows back, and then adjust your reins accordingly, where they're not too long, not too short, just right. But a lot of us, we have our hands up too high. I know I wrestle with this still, you know, to try and relax my hands down and let the horse carry my hands instead of me carrying them, because again, that makes a difference to the feeling for the horse. So, you know, we all have our crookednesses and things like that, and we have to train our bodies. You know, dancers are constantly training their bodies. I've done things with the Equus projects and done retreats, and when I'm talking like this to all these dancers, nobody sits still. They're always like, you know, moving their body, and and some of them get on the floor and their legs are doing things, you know. Riders sit there and it's like, you know, we're sitting listening and we're not training our bodies. We're watching television and eating popcorn, and then go, oh, now I'm going to go ride my horse. So depending on how good you want to be, you know, you want to then go beyond balance and learn how to use your body in the various gaits, you know, how to have control of that, a lot like a dancer. And, you know, I've spent years doing this. You know, Courtney and I ride together almost every day, and Courtney's been wrestling with getting her legs really right and getting them steady and her seat right and get her horse to have more suspension. And, you know, every now and then she'll say to me, how do you get your legs to be like that? How can they be so steady? And it's like, years. It just takes practice, and one day it's there, but you've got to work on it every day. And I do, because I'm manic, and Courtney's manic, and Aaliyah's manic, you know, a lot of you are manic about it. You want to be that good. You have to train yourself. And I'm a little bit lazy. You know, I don't go and work out and do all of that sort of thing, but I train myself constantly throughout the day. Even like I'm sitting now, I'm carrying myself. You know, I've got my dots together. I'm not, you know, sitting like a slouch. So, gotta be a little bit obsessive, I think. and then straighten your body. Actually, one of my horses, Navi, she had a terrible puncture wound in her hock a few years ago, and she's only just getting serviceable again now. And Aaliyah's riding her, and just at the walk, and she said, my goodness, she's so crooked, like she's throwing me to one side of her body. And that's because she's been defending that leg for so long that her body has kind of changed, its shape, because some muscles have got tighter and some have got longer. And it's just like what I was saying with Courtney when she was sitting on Roxy, that when you can't get your heel down and your foot level to the ground, it's because some muscles, the wrong muscles are tight and the wrong muscles are loose. And you've got to change that. And that just takes training and gymnastics and, not a lot of stretching. You don't want to torture your body, but just get things mobile. I can't recommend Pilates for dressage highly enough. I was listening to Janice when she did her session a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about how, I think she had a question about yoga, and she said, look, yoga's great because, it teaches you how to flex and balance and do all those kinds of things. But Pilates is the study of a body in motion, and how to use your body correctly and in a healthy way in motion. And then when you're sitting on a horse. So please do her course. I mean, it will transform you as a rider.
Thank you. Good point. This is a 3-part series. There's more to riding than just, one element. Just because you have one thing covered or you think you do doesn't make a perfect relationship with your horse while you're riding. So that's why we did this.
Right.
And I appreciate you bringing that up. We don't have a ton of time.
I can see the questions actually on the right here. Do you want me to just quickly go down them?
Yeah.
Ruth says I can do that. She has a very stiff and painful left hip. When I ride a circle to the right, my horse juts his shoulder forward into the circle, causes my leg to press into his left side, causing us to travel with his shoulder in and his nose out. Does Linda have any thoughts on how I use other parts of my body to help me communicate and get us a bit more straight? Yes, you have to not do that. So, Janice is really the expert here, but if you start going, what is my horse doing? And I don't want him to do that. So if he's doing that, my body must be doing this. So we have to try and change it. Now, if you've got pain, then, all bets are off. You've got to be very careful about that because your body's going to defend itself. And I would think Janice has probably got more information for you on that. But I also know that a lot of pain can be caused by sitting and holding your body incorrectly. I've even done things with people who've come up and, I put them into that rider stance like Courtney and I were doing and teach them how to hold their body. And all of a sudden they'll say to me, oh my God, my hip stopped hurting. Oh, my lower back stopped hurting. So sometimes that pain is because we've been carrying ourselves incorrectly versus it's, from an injury. But if it's an injury, you've got to rehabilitate to the best that you can. Also, sometimes, I've had people that say I've had a stroke and they've got a very weak right leg. And they go, well, how do I strengthen my right leg? And I tell them the opposite, weaken your left leg. Because the body will seek balance. So instead of trying to do more, which is very annoying to your horse, if you actually do less and get more like your weak side, your body will find balance and your horse will be happier. Kim King, I should have known that was you, long-waisted. We can change that. We'll do that in our next lesson. Liz, what aid do you give for a flying lead change? Can you go through what you do in your body? Oh yeah, well that's a whole seminar in itself, right? So when I want to be on a left lead, then I put my right elbow back, which weights my right hip, and it just softens my left hip, but I don't try to crank it or do anything crazy. And so then I put my body in what the horse's canter position would be like. And my outside elbow is the big deal for that. And then when I do a flying change, I change it. I put the weight into my left elbow and my left hip. Now that all sounds very simple, but there's, stages that you go up to get it to be that subtle. Sideways is a big part of it. being able to do simple changes, get right canter leads, left canter leads whenever you want them, and that your horse, you know, maintains the canter. You're not having to hold him back or push him into it. All of that has to change so you've got the right impulsion and balance and flexion and equal right and left through your sideways to then finally getting to where you can do a flying chain. But that's how I do it. I don't push with my legs, and I don't spur, and I don't switch my legs. I just switch my elbows. Easy, right? Can you please repeat the information of Janice's Pilates class you were referencing? Summer, where would they find that?
Yes, so I've dropped the link to Cindy down below her question. So you can go to pilatesfordressage.com, and we also have a free webinar with Janice that you can find on our Parelli Foundation YouTube page or on our Facebook page.
Yeah, is that all the questions?
There are a couple of in the Q&A. I don't know if you can see those. You probably have to go in, but for instance, there's.
Oh, I got it. I got it. Aaliyah found it. I see him. So Alexandra says, my right foot constantly comes out of the stirrup when I'm trotting, despite how short my stirrup leathers are. I ride in a Parelli all-purpose saddle. Yay for your horse. And this has been a problem for me for years. Standing is going to fix that. If you stand in your stirrups and feel how easy it is to weight one stirrup more than the other, that's what you have to overcome. And then you need to sit down and keep that equal weight in your stirrups, which is going to be really challenging for a little bit. Also, when that right foot comes out, usually it's because we're more closed in one hip than the other, usually. There could be a whole number of reasons. And remember I was talking about your good wrinkles in the back of your thigh? You'll probably find that you have better wrinkles on the left versus the right. And that's why your right foot comes out of the stirrup, because you're actually a little bit closed in that hip and therefore shorter and not in that leg and not weighting the stirrup properly. Janice will help you fix that. And also a lot of my exercises in Touchstone 10 will help you fix that as well. Anonymous attendee, how can you feel which trot diagonal you are on, especially the horse favors one diagonal in particular and keeps throwing you onto his favored diagonal? Can you please clarify which diagonal you need to be on depending on what canter lead you're trying to get? So the diagonal influences the ability of the hind leg to come forward. And usually you should be in the air in the rising trot when your horse's inside hind leg and outside front leg are off the ground, and then you're off the ground. And it's because that hip needs to push up in order to take the canter lead. So when you're on a straight line, it doesn't much matter, but when you're in a circle, to rise with the outside front and the inside hind is the appropriate diagonal for your horse. It makes canter transitions then much easier, and it also helps the bending of the horse because that inside hind leg has to come so much more under the body, and you need to be out of the way. As far as telling which one you're on, well, you can look, but then know that you're looking down. But I also find an easy way is to turn my shoulders. So if I'm riding along straight and I start doing my rising trot, if I turn my shoulders to the left and it gets uncomfortable, it'll tell me that I'm on the wrong diagonal. So did I say I'm riding to the left or the right? Let's do it this way. I'm riding on a circle to the right. Now my screen shows the opposite. Does it look like I'm going right when I say that? Summer?
Well, you're going to your right.
Does it look like I'm going right?
Yeah.
You're going to your right, yes.
To my right? Okay. All right, good. So I'm riding to the right on a circle. And so if I put my shoulders this way and do the rising trot, it'll feel great. If I put my shoulders that way while I'm going to the right, it'll feel terrible. So it feels jarry, and you go, oh, that, you know, I must be on the correct diagonal because this way it's right, right? But if I turned this way and it felt great while I'm going to the right, then I'm on the wrong diagonal. Say that 3 times fast. Okay, Robin, I get a pain in a muscle in my right inner thigh when I ride too long. Might I be setting myself up for this by the wrong position? Yes, good riding is not painful. So when you are feeling tension in your muscles and pain while you're riding, you're doing something wrong. And sometimes, you know, it's as easy as just being out of balance and, you know, you haven't got your dots lined up and you're not straight and all that kind of thing. But sometimes it can be that you're actually tightening that muscle, right? So you're gripping with that side instead of draping it. And so I often find that, like I would find it in my shoulder sometimes. I'd get a little ache, or in my scapula. And if I just moved it, the ache would go away. And then that would tell me I was just holding it stiff. Any suggestions regarding opening hip flexors when riding a very large, wide horse like a Clydesdale? You know, Jazz is a very wide horse. Remo was a very wide horse. A lot of my horses are quite wide, and I ride in a wide saddle, you know, because that's what's really comfortable for them. So super wides is what I ride on all my horses in the Parelli saddles. And sometimes I'll have people, you know, try a super wide saddle, and they go, oh, my hips don't open that wide. Usually when you're having trouble opening your legs, like, you know, like draping your thighs, it's because your back is arched and hollow. If you go back onto your balance point and let your thighs hang down, usually it feels just great. And then find the right place to put your stirrups. You know, I see a lot of people, they'll ride their horse bareback and they're just fine. And then they get in a saddle and they completely change how they ride, and suddenly they've got aches and stiffnesses and pains and things like that. So you'll find that, you know, if you just get the right position, like we were demonstrating tonight, there won't be any pain. And sometimes on a very wide horse, you need to change your stirrup length compared to a horse that's quite narrow. You know, because when it's narrower, your legs tend to be longer. When it's wider, your legs tend to be a little bit shorter because they've got to go around the horse's barrel. So there are a few tips for you there, Renee. I think that's probably it.
That's all. That's all.
But yeah, Summer, thank you so much for the idea to host this, and Letitia, you know, for the idea of really making known, you know, what are all the reasons that horses have trouble, and, you know, part of it's the rider, part of it's saddle, part of it is the horse is crooked. And the better and more knowledgeable we can become about these three things, the happier our horses will be. And, you know, some people don't care about a happy horse. They're not the ones on this in this program or even on this webinar. You know, we want a happy horse. I don't want a saddle that pinches my horse or that restricts him. I want him to go, oh, I love this saddle. I can move and I can stretch in it. And then I want a saddle that when I sit in it, it is not putting me in the wrong position. It's designed for that natural, stable position that I was talking about. So you know, in the Parelli saddles, you won't see these artificial deep seats and big thigh blocks that push your legs back and make your back hollow. It's all designed for good biomechanics, both for the horse and for the human. And then with what Janice gives us, and she's got a great special going, you know, for people who've come through the Parelli Foundation webinar, got a great special on her ridermanship course, which, you know, takes you through several weeks of exercises and tasks to build the rider body that you want and that your horse needs. And then, of course, you know, in the Savvy Club, we teach you through the levels program, and in the Touchstone, especially Touchstone 10, there's a whole bunch of information there about a lot of things that I've said tonight that will teach you. And then our Parelli instructors will help you. My finesse specialists, you know, have done a lot of training on this part of it especially, and you've got all the help in the world that you could desire. So thank you, everybody, for having me and for being part of this mission to change the world for horses and the people who love them. And keep it up, and I look forward to seeing you one day on the road, and certainly virtually until then.
Thank you so much, Linda. You are always such a joy, and I don't know how you keep teaching us more and more and more that we didn't know the last time, but it's so possible. I'm so grateful for everything that you've just said, and can't wait to put it into use. So thank you so much for making yourself available to us, and thank you everyone for joining us. It's been wonderful. All right.
Great.
Have a great evening.
Stay savvy. Keep it natural. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.